Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's the by-elections for this week are in, and I have to say it's all gone pretty much as we said it would. I haven't got any huge errors this week, although I did say in the last video that I thought the Greens would be the main beneficiaries um, to Labour losing vote share. I was a bit wrong on that. But generally speaking, the broad strokes, we got it right. There was not much to really report in this video, so we're going to have a quick look at some interesting bits, and that'll be it. So get straight into it. Then we'll start in. I want to start in Islington, because in Islington, Labour won, as you can see, fairly easily. But their vote share down 20%. This is what I said would happen. My summary of the preview video was, I think Labour will hold on to the majority of these wards where they're defending. They may lose one or two, which they did. We'll get on to that in a bit. But I think their vote share is going to decrease quite significantly, because that's what we've seen in the past couple of weeks, even in areas where they're very strong. So Islington, obviously Labour heartland, and yeah, sure enough, they're down 22% from over 60% to 40%. Now, Independent came second here. The Greens actually lost 11% of their vote, so yeah, that's quite interesting to see. I assume that seems to have gone to the Independent, along with the a decent amount of the 22% off of Labour's vote. The Independent is interesting. So I had a little look at who it was, and here's the chap who came second. So look, the laudable things for a local councillor to stand on, the reasons that he's standing, but the bottom one there, stand up for Palestine. Which, in my personal view, I find extraordinary for a local borough councillor to be standing on a stand up for Palestine. You can't do anything for Palestine as a borough councillor in London. But anyway, I've had it in my local town too, people standing on that, and it gets votes. And the reason I'm highlighting it is because this is becoming an issue for Labour. It's an issue where they're kind of sitting on the fence to a certain degree. They say they're an ally to Israel, but they want a ceasefire, but they don't go the full way of coming out in support for Palestine, Gaza, like the very far left, and indeed a lot of the Muslim population would like them to. And this is costing them. In areas like Islington, the population is, according to the 2021 census, the population in Islington is 12% Muslim. Tens of thousands of people who are Muslim in Islington. I think it's 20,000 odd people. It's a big chunk of the electorate, and we're starting to see these independents, as we saw in Westminster elections in July, the pro-Gaza, pro-Palestine independents that stood in the north, in Birmingham, indeed Jeremy Corbyn in Islington, in elsewhere in London and other cities. They did very well on this Palestinian topic with that Muslim contingent, and it's the same's happened here. He did very well. He came 12% off. It's not far away from, considering how far ahead Labour were. But look, Labour hold on, so they'll take that. But this is becoming an issue for Labour, and they're going to have to face it. There's a number of issues they've got that they're going to have to face, but this attack from their sort of left on this issue is becoming a bit of a problem for them. So, but they won Islington fairly comfortably. Woodhouse in Sheffield is another interesting one. So the Liberal Democrats gained it off of Labour. So this is the one that Labour did lose, the one they failed to defend. This was interesting because obviously you can see the Liberal Democrats did very well, increasing their vote share by 25%, but Reform came straight in out of nowhere, up to second, almost winning. They're only 0.3% behind. I think it was 10 votes. In actual votes, it was 10 votes away from winning this. And the only reason I'm surprised at that is that if we go to the nowcast, and I know, look, we've said before, votes in parliamentary constituencies and national polling don't mirror exactly what you can expect to see in local by-elections, but in Sheffield, Reform don't trouble the scorers. This is the constituency that I believe that Woodhouse ward is in, and Reform aren't even there, less than 2%. The other ones is the same, 1.5%, 1.5%, 1.5%. So Reform aren't a thing in Sheffield, really. I mean, you move a little bit further outside of Sheffield, and they are. We were looking at that in the video yesterday, where we were looking at how close behind Reform are in some of these areas in Yorkshire. But I was just surprised to see Reform spring up quite so strongly here, and the Lib Dems only just managing to hold them off. I think also there's an argument to be made here, and you may disagree, but I think a decent chunk of that 36.8% of Labour's vote that's disappeared here, I think a decent amount of that has gone to reform. I think it makes more sense at this stage for us to assume that the Conservative vote has gone to the Lib Dems, because I think the Conservative to Reform vote switches are mostly baked in now. I don't think the Reform Party can wring too much more out of the Conservatives. I think their joy now comes from Labour voters who are unhappy, and, as I mentioned before, people who are staying at home and not voting. So yeah, that's interesting to see Reform doing so well there. Village in Dagenham, or Barking and Dagenham, but it's in Dagenham Village. So this was the one where there was two councillors up for election on this ward. I was fascinated because in parliamentary polling, Reform were doing pretty well in Dagenham, but they didn't stand anyone here. And look, it's the same as what we said. Labour win fairly comfortably. They've still got over 50% of the vote, but their vote share's down by between 25 and 30%. Again, it's a huge drop. Conservatives doing well, improving by 16%, but still pretty far behind. I'm surprised Reform didn't stand here. I think they could have done quite well. I feel like Reform would have been in with a chance of winning here, looking at that drop in support for Labour. But who knows? I don't know what the strategy was there. But again, Labour had such a lead that it was able to absorb that drop in support for them. Similar in Enfield, not quite as bad for Labour, down only 14%. I mean, it's still quite significant, but not as bad. The Conservatives did quite well, ran them fairly close, but Labour hold on in Enfield too. Frampton, Cotterell, South Gloucestershire, yeah, we said this one might happen, so it's a no overall control council. I think the Conservatives are the largest party, the Lib Dems are second largest. We said in areas where the Liberal Democrats were in control of councils last week, they got hammered in wards where they were defending. But this week they did reduce, they declined slightly their vote share. The Conservatives doing quite well, up by 8%, but the Liberal Democrats holding on there fairly close, but comfortable enough. Again in York, the Lib Dems actually did very well here, improving by over 10%, getting a very large share of the vote, 64%. Very good. Reform coming in third there, not particularly strong for them in York. I think you'd probably expect that. It's a Labour held city in terms of parliamentary constituencies. Again, I just don't think Reform are going to do too well in the city area, the urban areas, too much, except for where, like we saw with Bradford, you got Bradford, one of the Bradford constituents, Bradford West, I think it is currently being won by a pro-Palestine candidate. Bradford South, I think it is, or one of the other Bradfords is being won by Reform currently, marginally. So I think in those areas where you have that friction, there's a lot of tension between communities. That's in urban areas like that where Reform will do quite well. But places like York, I'm not sure is too much of a fertile ground for them, but not bad, coming straight in at third above Labour. And then it's just the two Scottish ones. So Western Bartonshire, Labour, interestingly, their vote share declined more than the SNP in this one, whereas the last couple of weeks we've seen Labour's vote share decline, but by less than the SNP's decline. But not this week, but they're still comfortably ahead on first preferences. Reform again, jumping up into third place in Scotland. Yeah, distant third place, 20% behind the SNP in second. But again, it's the third week running we've seen Reform come in at third place in a Scottish by-election where people hadn't really thought of Reform being a thing. Ballotbox Scotland's got the results for this too on their Twitter account. Do go follow them. And I shout at their page all the time because their analysis is fantastic if you're interested in Scottish politics. So this is the same as what you just saw, but it's got the actual number of votes there. So you can see the Labour Party fairly comfortably ahead on first prefs. And lastly, West Fife. This one's interesting. So if you remember from the preview video, the SNP actually finished ahead of Labour on first preferences in 2022. But after all the preferences came across in the later stages, the Labour Party were quite comfortably ahead and won. Well, in this one, Labour have actually very slightly improved their number of votes. The SNP have declined, so Labour have actually got ahead of them. Although it's neck and neck, actually, as you can see. But Labour have gone neck and neck slash slightly ahead on first preference votes. So we would expect them to win this one even more comfortably than they did in 2022. And so that's it. That one is what I'm looking for now. Yeah, 9 by-elections, all of them defended by the incumbents successfully, with the exception of Woodhouse and Sheffield. Liberal Democrats gaining another one off Labour. We'll have a quick look up. Not too much changed on this score, so we can see since the general election in 2024 in July, there have been 83 Labour defences, and they've held on to 60 of them. So that's not bad. It's not bad. They've been on a tough run recently, and I think things may get worse for them before they get better. Conservatives obviously have been the big gainers, improving from 23 before July to 44 now, and of course Reform have gone from having none to having, what are they on now, 5? Yeah, 5. So yeah, that's it for this week. Next week we've got 6 more next week, so a small by-election week next week. Some interesting ones there. Cardiff will be interesting, I think. We were looking yesterday, weren't we, in my Nowcast video about how hot on the heels Reform are of Labour in the south of Wales. So that one could be an interesting one to keep. I haven't done any research into any of these yet, so just going off my first initial thoughts, seeing where they are, I'll do some research and give you the preview video early next week. Filed could be interesting. Looks like it's an independent stood down or passed away or something there. So it's an independent, so that one's going to be up for grabs. Could be an inroad for the Tories. They're doing quite well in the northwest. Maybe Reform too. We'll have a look. Glasgow could be interesting with the SNP defending. We've seen, like I said just a moment ago, we've seen the SNP's vote share declining more rapidly than Labour's in most of the Scottish by-elections. So that could be an in for Labour in Glasgow potentially. I will wait for Ballot Box Scotland's analysis before I make any calls on that though. The other ones I'm not too sure. I would say South Oxfordshire should be a Lib Dem hold, but last time I said Lib Dem's going to hold everything easily, I got absolutely clowned. So yeah, well, I'll have a look at the other ones and research them up for you. I will do the preview video. It'll be out early next week. Let me know if you've got a day that you prefer the by-election preview videos to come out. I mean, Thursdays obviously is the days of the election. I've been sending them out on either Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday. Do you have a preference of which of those days works best? If not, I'll just chuck it out at any point. If you've got a preference, let me know in the comments. That's it for today. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. More like this on the way. Election results, polling, Westminster polling, Nowcast videos, all that sort of stuff. I'm trying to improve the content as we go. So yes, thank you for watching. Please do leave a like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.